The deadline is rapidly approaching, and we have just a little under 4 days before the deadline of April 15th, the deadline to submit your IRS tax returns. And unfortunately, this year, many folks are going to be receiving a surprise refund, and not necessarily a good surprise, as reports indicate that the IRS is planning on and anticipating the lower amounts of tax returns this year in comparison to previous years, at a time where people are struggling the most to get by, make ends meet, and really cannot afford to suffer the loss, the financial burden and impacts of a once a year stimulus, if you will, from receiving a refund from the overpayment of taxes to the Internal Revenue Service all year long. Money that people could have been putting to great use to help them pay bills, make ends meet, maybe even stash a little bit away, save and invest. But instead, the IRS holds on to it, and you have to fight to get it back. Oh yeah, and by the way, they don't pay you back with interest. This is money that could be in savings accounts. I'm not a huge fan of savings accounts because savings accounts do not make my money grow. But if I had my choice between a savings account, a high yield savings account, or the IRS holding my money, well then I'm going to choose a savings account each and every time. Additionally, this surprise is going to, as I've discussed before in previous videos, hurt businesses in different industries, one of which being the car market. And the automotive industry is already suffering and seeing its challenges as a result of the economy, inflation, job loss, higher interest rates by the Fed. But the car industry considered tax season to be literally Christmas. This was the time in which they would almost cover all of their costs, basically, based on tax return recipients having the funds available and able to put down for down payments on these new cars, used cars, trade-ins, and they are not going to have that opportunity quite this year like they have in the past. Again, our economy is linked, tied together, interconnected. These struggles that we face independently affect us all in somehow, some way, shape, or form. Remember, folks, insulating yourself from inflation also includes protecting yourself with diversity, security, and cash flow from hiccups, bumps in the road, quite like not receiving the full tax refund or tax return that you had expected and anticipated. I know a lot of people actually bank on these returns, these refunds every year. And part of that reason is because earning more money and saving money is sometimes difficult for people to grasp that concept and exhibit and exert the discipline needed to not spend the money, all of the money in your paycheck, or some of which spending it before they even receive it. which is why we are currently in the middle of a extreme debt crisis right now. Credit card balances reaching record highs, while interest rates are also going up on these credit cards, making it more difficult to repay and ultimately continuously further pushing people down this cycle of never-ending debt. Almost a funnel, like a drain of some sort that you can't get out of. It's like a death spiral. That's what it is. Death spiral. So anyway, this surprise is not a good surprise. It's not a welcome surprise. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. The clock is ticking. Time is counting down. And ultimately, we got to have a plan. We got to have a strategy moving forward. April 15th will come and go. And if that day arrives, Jackson Hewitt, H&R Block, TurboTax, whatever service, system as a service you decide to use, e-file, direct deposit, and maybe even find yourself in a situation where the tax return, tax refund is so low this year that you actually owe money. That would be devastating. There's very few people in this country currently, according to statistics, have the funds available to cover an emergency expense of $500 or less. And if we're getting above the $500 mark, then the percentages just continuously climb. Unfortunately, this isn't information that they share with and teach, I think, growing up. I think we need more financial education, planning, budgeting, and strategy in school than perhaps what is at the top of the list of these curriculum and syllabus that are being argued over about some of these studies that really don't add up to a hill of beans when you think about the grand scheme of things and getting by. But here we are nonetheless, and if you haven't already filed, comment down below. And if you have, do the same. I want to get a gauge. I want to see how many people are seeing returns below what they expected. Is the data provided by the Internal Revenue Service, the IRS, accurate? Or is this just more smoke being blown up our butts as they continuously manipulate the narrative and mislead the public?